Just as a reminder, you can visit us at thepandapod.com. That's thepandapod.com to grab our RSS feed, listen directly, and share PandaPod with your family and friends. You can also reach us directly via email through podcast at thepandapod.com. Thanks for listening.
Ever felt like you're wandering through a world that doesn't quite fit? Like you're a square peg being nudged into a round hole? Maybe you've caught yourself gazing up at the stars, pondering the mysteries that seem to slip through the fingers of conventional wisdom. Do esoteric beliefs resonate with you more than everyday chatter? Is there a voice inside you whispering that there's infinitely more to this universe than what meets our 3D eyes? If any of this sounds familiar, if any of these questions stir something deep within you, then you might just be the alien we're looking for. This isn't about being from another planet. It's about feeling like you're out of place in this one. It's about believing in the extraordinary, the spaces between. So tell us, do you feel that call, that pull towards something, somewhere that defies the ordinary? If so, welcome. Your mothership, Hot Alien Summer Camp, is calling you home. Are you ready to answer that call? To step into a space where your unique beliefs aren't just accepted but celebrated? Imagine a place where the extraordinary is the norm and the mysteries of the cosmos are the evening's main topic of discussion. A retreat where every workshop, every activity, and every shared meal is an opportunity to explore what lies beyond our conventional 3D experience. Did you find yourself nodding along just then? Feeling that spark of excitement at the thought of connecting with others who share your curiosity for the unknown? Then it's no coincidence you're hearing this right now. This is your invitation to join us, to become a part of a community that doesn't just ask the big questions, but revels in them. And what's a gathering of aliens without a little interstellar entertainment? Prepare to laugh with beings who understand your humor, as we bring you live comedy from cosmic minds of Ryan Singer and paranormal Karen Rontowski. Their insights and wit are as boundless as the universe, promising an experience that's as enlightening as it is hilarious. So, if you're ready to leave behind the world of round holes for a place where every square peg finds its place, a Hot Alien Summer Camp awaits. From August 8th through 11th in Lebanon, Tennessee, we're not just creating a retreat. We're forming a constellation of like-minded souls, each shining their unique light. Are you one of us? Are you ready to explore the depths of your alien soul among friends who understand that it's time to beat 'em up to Hot Alien Summer Camp? Your space in the cosmos is reserved. All you need to do is claim it. Visit HotAlienSummerCamp.com. Pre-sale tickets are on sale now. Let's embark on this cosmic journey together.
Hey everybody, it's Rabb, and welcome to the Panda Pod, Thoughts Expanded. I am joined by the usual suspects, Jeff,
Hello.
and Wiggy.
What up?
And so today, this talk is going to be a part 3 of our last one, somewhat. We never had an official part 3 before, but I feel like some of our economic discussions have definitely gone into part 3, part 4 territory, and this is kind of in the same boat, you know. I know last time the thing I really wanted to put a pin in and come back to was some stuff that, in particular, Wiggy was saying around at the end about the Supreme Court and the idea that is the largest impediment to justice, and if we could change it by making them directly electable or something like that, that would be positive. And I do think, first of all, I should certainly say that I agree with all of those statements. It would be positive, and that it's they are a huge impediment to justice, and I would say, out of the 3 branches, I think that they are probably the one that's the most effective in shutting down legitimate change, what I would consider to be legitimate change. But what I kind of wanted to talk about was just how you would do that, and or would it be possible to tweak that without tweaking a whole bunch of other things at the same time? You know, kind of the idea of like minor tweaks to this system in general.
Yeah, so I guess I put me down as skeptical that just changing the Supreme Court would do the trick, but I'm willing to hear Justin out on this one.
Yeah, so be prepared. After we talk about this for a little bit, for me to go on a completely wild tangent directly related to this problem.
Sure.
But
actually, I would say feel free. Tell us why the Supreme Court is like the worst thing, if that's what the rant is. Yeah, like we should hear that first.
That's not it.
Oh, okay.
This is a wild tangent.
All right, fair enough. Then maybe stay on topic for a bit.
Yeah, we need to stay on topic before I go that far.
Okay.
But so the idea is that because justices are picked by the two parties,
right,
that there is no, like, they're all being picked because they agree with one side of an agenda.
Sure.
Right. Whether or not that's a specific issue that's currently like the big problem, or whether or not that's just an ideological 70% they agree with us, right? They're not going to cause that big of a trouble on their own, right? Is kind of the idea behind it. And this is directly proven by what's happened over the past 15 years. So let's start from Obama's presidency, right? So anytime they try to get through a justice, right, Mitch McConnell drug it into the deep so that it couldn't happen, right? The moment Trump was president, they decided that they were going to put justices in, right? And they stacked the deck. And then the big concern on their side was like, no, we don't want, you need to elect us all back to Congress to make sure that Biden doesn't do the same thing. Like that was a big reason for like the pitch for the Republican Party for Congress that year. So because they're picked by the parties, they don't have any interest in upholding the actual interests of the rest of the country, the people. And so if you were able to, like, even if you made them similar to presidential elections, right? Where you say, okay, we have these justices, let's give them debate time, right? Let's let them talk, right? Let's see, how much they make that on different topics, right? You can start with all the different topics from abortion to whatever the case may be, right? And have them talk about it, see what their opinion is, and then we get to vote on them. And there's no electoral college type system in place for that. It's pure popular vote. And we can make it so where that if enough people, like, they get into power and they start doing some crazy shit that doesn't, make sense with what they're doing, there's a way for us to recall them. Right. And create a special election. Like, that creates the accountability. There's a chance that we wouldn't even need like a term limit per se, like, which is a problem in the current system. There's a term limit problem because they're there for life and they're picked by the party. They're not picked by the people. But if they're picked by the people and they rerun and we elect them again because we still like them as a justice, they wouldn't need a term limit, right?
Sure.
We could put an age limit, which is another thing that the country desperately needs, especially as we're living longer than we were back in when we created the country, right? People were living to like 40 years old and dying. Like, that's not the case anymore. People are living to be 100 something, and they don't need to be on the bench if they can't.
I say we take this idea a step further, and that we just have a America's Got Talent style. Every time they make a decision You know, we have to like go like there's Nielsen ratings on their decisions or whatever. You know, like we watch it and we vote on them in real time. We're like, I don't like what they're doing. That's not good. You know, like C-SPAN's converted to just following the like reality lives of these judges and deciding that way. You know?
Yeah, so I mean that would be a major reform, and I mean honestly, I think what Wiggy's talking about would be a major reform too.
Sure.
Yeah, there is no small change. There's no one small change, which is kind of what you were getting at, Rabb. I don't think there are small changes that we can make that add up to the way that we want the country to run. I think that we have to start with one major change. Like,
I mean, a small change though would be to add term limits.
I don't think it would make a difference because they're still
the term limits?
Because they're still picked by the people. Right?
Yeah, I mean that is true.
Like
with the current system, I don't see any way to avoid people getting elected just because they'll vote a certain way and you know a specific topic that's hot at the moment.
Right. I mean, I was going to say that right when Wiggy started talking, except I didn't want to interrupt him. I'm glad I didn't. If you did just put term limits in, you would effectively have the same system because, like, I mean. If the elections were just like the presidential ones, I mean, I don't feel like I have much say over who gets to run for president. You know, I mean, there's 2 of them, but that doesn't mean I feel like I have say over, right? I mean, I guess there's maybe like 3 this election or whatever, but like, I get what I'm saying is that in general, I don't feel like I have say over who gets picked, right?
Right. You could say that. So anybody who's a district, right? So anybody who's in a district can put themselves up, right? And then you have, I mean, have all the judges get together, like make it a fucking Catholic cardinal system where the judges pick who they think is the smartest person to do the job. They go up, right? Say there's 5 of them, have those 5 debate, then the public gets to pick.
Sure.
Right?
Like, yeah, I mean, that would be a legitimately better system, I think. If the judges picked the candidates, like that actually probably would be way better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they know who the smart judges are and who the stupid judges are. And then Jeff, we could have the whole like TV type situation, right? Where you put all the judges in the house for a day or whatever, like, or you go around and you interview all the other judges that pick these people.
I think Jeff was talking about live voting reality style, not.
Well,
yeah,
I know, but I'm saying it, but I'm thinking like Big Brother for judges, right? Like,
well, see, now I'm thinking more along like America's Next Top Model, except America's Next Supreme Court Judge. You know, they have to do like these little competitions, and you know they can have like their campaign crew is like their little like modeling crew that helps them like get ready for their events and stuff. And you get a little glimpse into like the glam and lifestyle of a Supreme Court judge, you know.
I'm actually thinking now of This Old House, except it's This Old Judge, and they're coming in to renovate the existing Supreme Court.
You know, Queer Eye for judges could be great though. Yeah. I'm into that.
Queer Eye for the straight upholder of justice.
Yeah, like JVN coming in and helping out with like, you know, Ruth Bader Ginsburg's fit for her hairdo for the day or something, you know.
Lifestyles of the rich and lawful.
I mean, that could just be what it is. It's just the lifestyles of the rich and famous. You know?
Can you imagine if Ruth Bader Ginsburg had been alive for Queer Eye for the Judge guy? Like she would, like there were some people who would just have heart attacks over that.
Yeah, I bet she would have loved it though.
Yeah, in both good and bad ways. Some people would have a heart attack because they'd be so upset, and some people would have a heart attack because they'd be so happy.
Yeah.
So taking this back, so the idea around us having more control over the judges. So what's the power that the Supreme Court has, right? What's their duty?
Well, I was gonna say maybe we should talk about that. Like, I mean, the president. You keep saying the parties have won, which I think is a correct statement. But as far as like legal is concerned, I mean, it's the president, right? And I actually looked up how many, when you were talking, how many judges Obama versus Trump did. And obviously you keep in mind that Obama had an 8-year term, or 2 terms, right? And Trump only had 4 years so far, at least. So as of right now in 2024, with both of them out of power, Obama has appointed 2 justices to the Supreme Court, 55 justices to the judges to the Court of Appeals, 268 judges to the district courts, and 4 judges to the Court of International Trade. And Trump has done 3 associate judges of the Supreme Court, which I'm not 100% sure what that means.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
It's probably the same as a judge, and Wikipedia is just phrasing it differently. I really don't know. That doesn't make any sense. They're making it sound like they were fake appointments, but I mean, he really did appoint those people to the Supreme Court. And he's done 54 to the Court of Appeals, which was only 1 less than Obama. 174 judges to the district courts, which that's significantly less, but I mean, once again, half the time. And 3 judges to the Court of International Trade, which, I mean, I kind of want to know what this Court of International Trade is, but I think that's another episode.
Wow. So in 4 years, he did more judges. I mean, but obviously that's who controls is when the judge dies,
Right.
I mean, who knows when that's going to happen, but
yeah.
I mean, I don't know how you could look at those statistics and say that, they did not stack the court in that 4-year period.
Yeah. So, and to your point, term limits would stop an uncertainty when somebody would die.
Right.
But they get to plan for that. Everybody sees it coming for the most part, right? Like, they're generally healthy. They generally live really long lives. Like how old was Scalia? He was in the 70s, right?
Well, I mean, the people they're getting selected from are people who probably would have good health care, whether or not they were a judge or not. And they have extremely good health care as a judge.
So even if we went to term limits, they could still, yes, that could make elections more, greater elections more important, but we're still at a 2-party system. So it's still the same problem again, right? Like, it makes it more predictable as to when a judge's time would be up, but we're still beholden to the parties.
It's almost like it'd be better if they had 1 term limit, like a single term, and that's it.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. And I'm not sure exactly what the power is of the Chief Justice. They don't seem to really have any power, as far as I can tell. But I mean, that calls into question, why do we have a Chief Justice? Like, is that for when there's a tie? Like, there shouldn't be a tie.
There can't be a tie normally. I mean, I think theoretically someone could not be there, and then maybe the Chief Justice's vote would decide it. Also, I mean, I think even just literally, if you're going to have a meeting at all, having 1 person be in charge is sometimes helpful. I mean, at least, I don't know. It seems like if you have 1 person who's like, okay, I am going to at least set the terms of this meeting and the rules. They don't have to dominate the meeting necessarily, but I feel like it's kind of useful to have somebody.
Yeah, but you could do that.
Charge.
Yeah, but you could do that with a court assistant.
Yeah, that's true.
You don't have to have an actual authority figure. You just have somebody who's a court assistant that says, "Okay, I hold the power over the meetings."
That's a good point.
Just to make sure that it doesn't get out of hand. And I can censor or whatever, whatever the case, right?
Yeah, I mean, the best system would be one where that person may be in charge but does not vote at all, right. Or something like that, maybe.
Yeah. So to come back to the point, this gives the people the power over the judicial system. So now let's talk about all of the crazy bullshit that goes on in Congress and that goes on in the executive branch, right? So all the crazy fucking corruption that's going on, right? The Justice Department has the final say in that shit.
Sure.
If that goes to court, it's going to get appealed. It's going to get appealed. It's going to get appealed. It's going to go up to the Supreme Court, and they're going to have the final say on what the fuck's going on. I would rather those people be beholden to the people rather than to the parties to
Sure.
make those decisions. And so, like, it's even bullshit to say that I'm going to take this a step further. I don't think that the whole what's that called when you the impeachment process, right? That goes through Congress, and they have this whole fucking thing that they go through, right? There's an investigation stage, there's this stage to that stage, and the worst thing that ever happens is they get impeached, and it means fucking nothing, right? So it's just a giant distraction from anything else that's fucking going on. How about when you think the president's done something that's fucking illegal, you present that to the legal system, and it goes to the fucking Supreme Court instead of it going to like an actual court system, instead of just fucking whoever got voted in on whatever side in fucking Congress. Like,
it is kind of crazy that
farther.
Yeah, that Congress gets to decide who's impeached, and that's the only Congress is the only body that can start the impeachment process for both the president and the Supreme Court judge, as far as I know. I mean, maybe there is some like arcane way to do it as a regular person, apart from calling your congressperson. But if there is, then no one uses it, and you would be laughed out of the room even if it's on the books, right? So, you know, I mean, presumably Congress is the only party that can impeach the president or any judges. And a congressperson, I think there's a process for recalling them, but once again, never used. I mean, when's the last time you heard of a congressperson getting recalled?
I think it did happen recently. I think there was one that happened. Oh, it was the fucking dude in New York that was lying about literally everything.
No, he got booted. He got booted by his fellow congressmen, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, right, but there was a recall. There was a recall on him. I don't think it passed. I don't know if it passed or not.
He had a funny name that was like really appropriate. What was it?
It was a fake name. It wasn't even his real name.
Oh, wow. Actually, according to this article, you can't recall people from Congress. There is this is somebody writing this, but it's on a government website, and they say that you can't recall a member of Congress. It's prohibited by the Constitution, and a vacancy can only be created by the incumbent's death or resignation, the expiration of his term, or by some direct action of the body. So, and this was decided in a court case, apparently, according to this person, Burton versus United States.
So, once again, there's nothing we can do about it once they're in there, right? And this was decided by a court case, and that court case was decided by who was in power. So it's a cycle loop, right? So, I feel like it really is the linchpin, because it gives us the control that, like, at least one of the fucking branches of government needs to be in control of people without a representation having to happen. I don't like this system at all.
Right.
Like we can just go ahead and say that. Like, we hate the system as it is. Like, this representative government is not representative.
Sure.
So it's failing in everything. So it doesn't even fucking work. But at least one of them could be more simply, I think, in control of people. Like, the president does it because you have to abolish the electoral college. If you get rid of the electoral college and it goes on popular vote, I'm all for it. Then we're responsible for who the president is. Even though there's all the bullshit on the side of one party deciding who's going to be the fucking
Sure.
That's still a problem. But at least it's voted on and ratified at the very top by the people. Like, that would be one step. That would be a small change, an incremental change that could be put in place that would have an effect on the government. But if we were in control of the judicial system, at least we know that there is a chance, a much higher chance, that when we are talking about what's actually law in this country and what gets enforced is determined by us and not by the people who currently hold power.
Right.
And
that make a big, I think it make a really big difference.
I think you're saying something that's really important to this topic overall, which is like, I think you're talking about the people taking control of the Supreme Court, which I think that would necessarily be a change. Like, it's not like, I mean, obviously that would be a change, right? But that would necessarily be like a structural change. Like, even if somehow the rules didn't change at all, but the people actually truly were in control of that court, like, that would be a huge change regardless of the rules, right? So, I mean, I think when you articulate a vision of the system changing, it still starts with something that is almost like beyond our legal power to achieve, right? Like I can't think of how we would, through legal means, take control of the court.
Okay, so this is going to lead me to one tangent. That's going to lead me to another tangent.
Okay.
So currently, the system that we have is this fake representational government that is currently in power. There's no way for us to make any systemic change unless we have people that don't have an agenda, that are intelligent people that go in and we elect them, right? Like, is it possible to do that? Yes, it is possible for us to do that. But the organization of so many people to get to that point to vote for a single candidate is almost too hard enough already.
Sure.
Especially when we're talking about, because it has to start at local government and move its way up over time. So we vote for local council people. We like what they're actually, we're paying attention, which we don't have the time to do. We like what they're doing. We get them up and now they're mayor, right? And then the people in the city really like what they're doing and say, okay, like, let's support this guy in his bid for governor or to go to Congress, right? And then we say, okay, but that takes time because they have to prove themselves in each level of the government before they actually get there, right? You need to start with local government and then move into global governance, which isn't something that's required right now. You can just run for Congress and you don't have to have any experience in actually governing anything, which is one that's a problem with me. I
you
don't
do that
like
for
the
president too.
Right? Yeah, you
can do
can
it
just
for
run for
anything
fucking
you want to,
president. You can just run for whatever the fuck you want. And I think I don't like the idea of people staying in power for too long, but I do think that there should be a career progression, right? And then we should have a proper retirement system for those people so that they're not beholden to all of the corporate buyback bullshit that happens in the current system, right? So they don't have to worry about their future when they're done being president, right? They don't have to they don't have to decide deals and do backroom bullshit just to make sure that they can get paid $2 million to go do a speaking fee at some like fucking medical company, right? Like, that shouldn't be a thing. But other than that change over multiple generations, because it's a multi-generational thing. It's not just something that can be done in one generation. Outside of that, that's going to lead me to my other tangent, which I definitely think we can talk about for another half hour. My wild tangent at this point is, let's pose the question. With our current governmental system, and something that I was talking about before when we were talking specifically about rules and laws governing AI.
Right.
Okay. So rules and laws governing AI as it gets more and more expansive and more powerful. I don't think our current government has a system in which they can correctly compartmentalize and handle what's going to happen when we plug a supercomputer into AI with a nuclear power plant right next to it, right?
Sure.
So what happens at that point when it's no longer, when the AI doesn't become The AI isn't blocked by anything at that point. It has everything it needs to do whatever it is it wants to do. Yeah, I see you smiling, Jeff. So how do we govern AI appropriately going forward?
If only there was a good piece of modern media that covered this exact topic that we could watch and maybe discuss on an episode, you know?
Maybe. All right, Jeff. Rabb,
It's really interesting.
Jeff, Rabb. Let's watch it. Let's watch it. Let's make an agreement. We'll watch it by the time we do the next episode, and that's what we'll talk about.
Holy hell.
For the last episode of the
For
season.
the last episode of the season, that's what we'll talk
We'll
about.
finally talk about
Okay.
Mrs. Davis.
All right, how long is it total? Let me make sure I can...
8 episodes, like 45 to an hour each. It's only 8 episodes.
I could probably manage that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's try to do that. Okay, then we'll talk about it on the next episode and give Jeff what he's been waiting for almost a year now.
Pleasure.
Oh, wait, what am I going to tell people this podcast is about? Because I've been telling us a podcast about not watching Mrs. Davis.
It turns out the Panda Pod was a podcast about not
Oh,
watching
wow.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Now after
expanded.
Yeah, after watching it, our thoughts will be expanded. Yeah.
That's totally true. Yeah, makes
right.
sense.
So my problem is I don't think this current government will be able to correctly monitor and correctly police AI usage going forward. They've already kind of proven that they can't, because all of the AI development is being done in the silo by companies who are not telling us what the fuck's going on.
Sure.
So my wild tangent. I think the only type of governmental system that could control and have proper reasoning over this is some kind of dictatorship. And go.
Well, I mean, it's kind of a loaded question because, like, you almost, like, there is a term, right? Like, dictatorship of the proletariat. Like, that's a term, right? Are you familiar with that?
I mean, that's essentially what happened in Soviet Russia, right?
That is literally what Marx writes, right? Mark. That's what Mark wrote down.
Mark.
Mark was dope.
Yeah,
Mark knew some shit.
Yeah, we all love Mark, but no, I mean,
Yeah,
Mark's
he's got 2 first names. His name's Karl Mark. He's from
Yeah, so I mean, he said that it was, you know, the solution effectively, right, was for dictatorship of the proletariat, and I think, like, he's calling back, because at that point in time there weren't a lot of dictators, because, like, if you think about it, most of the people who were rulers were kings or something like that, right, or like a duke or whatever, right, at that point in time.
and they were going out of style. They were dying.
They were, but it wasn't really in full effect yet in 1850. And so, like, at that point, there wasn't Hitler. He wasn't talking about Hitler when he was saying a dictator. Like, that's one person everybody thinks about. They also think about, like, a lot of, like, Latin American dictators and, like, South and African dictators. Like, I would say those are all, like, modern things. Like, obviously, Marx is not, like, he doesn't know about those things when he's writing them. Mark is not psychic. So at that point in time, he was calling back to a term that was, like, mostly used in the Roman times, right? Where there was literally, like, the early Roman Republic had a system where somebody would be in power for a short amount of time. That person would be called a dictator. And the idea was that they were put in power for an emergency reason. And effectively, they were somewhat elected. I'm sure you could do a whole episode on that system too, but you know, they had some accountability, and it was very expected that they were going to serve for a year term, and then people were going to see, like, okay, does it make sense to keep that person around, right? And so on, and generally that they would retire after, like, at most a couple of years. So when you say a dictator, that's immediately what I think of, right? Like, somebody, not necessarily, I mean, I guess that you probably would have, like, a super charismatic leader at the front of it. But like, if they are legitimately supported by a whole bunch of people, like, I think that they can accomplish a lot of good in a short time, even if they're not, like, they would be called a dictator by, like, the New York Times for sure. Like, anybody trying to do anything good would be called a dictator by the New York Times, regardless of how accountable to the people they are. In fact, the more accountable to the people they are, the more likely they are to get called a dictator, I bet.
Yeah. So this is branching into.
Wait, you should let Jeff go. He hasn't talked in a
Yeah,
while.
Jeff, go.
No, go Wiggy.
Okay. Look at Jeff's face right now. Okay, so when I think about this specifically, so is there a current governmental system, right, that can quickly, and what I mean by dictatorship in this round is, what do I think can be quickly, they can quickly and efficiently hold power, right? They can quickly and effectively rule without having to go through a body to create the laws, right? When I look at current systems of government that's currently available, the only country that could reasonably do that in a best case scenario is China. And the reason example that I'm going to give of this is COVID.
Sure.
Okay. China, even though we're going to stay on topic here, we're not going to go on tangents, but their effective way of managing COVID and how quickly that they were able to just shove people in their homes and tell them not to leave. Not saying that's the right thing to do, not going down that road. I'm saying, as far as effectiveness when making a decision, happens near immediately and it's organized, right? So when we talk about something like AI, which is an unknown, has an unknown future, because it can go several different ways, there needs to be checks and balances involved there, and decisions need to happen quickly. And so when I think of the current government, I think China's the only one that's capable of doing that right now. Because even if and let's compare that to the U.S. In the U.S., there would have to be a special committee, right? So there would have to be representatives of Congress or the Senate that were put into a committee, probably
Sure.
the Senate, that were put into a technology committee. There already is one. Those people are 70 and don't understand how the internet works. So we've already got a problem there.
Yeah, they don't know Mark.
Yeah, they don't know Mark.
They're scared of Mark.
Yeah, they're really afraid.
They hear Mark, they hear his name, and they just freak out.
Yeah. So I don't think we're capable because everything takes longer. And this is kind of one of the arguments that happens against a representative democracy for something that's more of a dictatorship level thing. Things are slow in a democracy, right? And on purpose and for a good reason most of the time. But when we have an emergency, right? When we have an emergency that cannot be solved by our military, we're really indecisive. It takes a really long time to get anywhere. Like for an example, gay rights, right? It took 20 years for something that really should have only taken at maximum 2.
Sure.
20 years sounds like a really low estimate for how long.
It could be a lot. I'm just saying. I'm just being.
Well, I love the idea of a dictator who does gay rights though. Like that's the first thing day one.
Yeah, day
I want the gay
one.
dictator. That sounds amazing.
Day one. But so my other thought around this, and if you have any comments on this portion, please say them now.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I'm You said a lot.
Yes, I said a lot.
And I kind of distracted myself with that joke.
That's like a joke.
Jeff, do you have anything first?
Well, you keep saying like what country can do it, and I can't think of any countries, but I feel like this kind of issue is going to have to be regulated by like corporations first, unfortunately. And
Sure.
and
Or the international government
thankfully,
body.
or yeah, I mean maybe, but I mean that's just as dysfunctional as a government.
And a
So
corporation.
I think a corporation is really much more in line with what you're describing as far as the dictatorship thing is concerned, because there is a CEO in charge who's making a decision about what direction things are going. You
Well,
know,
the board's making that decision,
well,
and they're
Yeah,
all about their money.
depends on the company exactly who's in charge in
Yeah.
making decisions,
And
but
that's a
either
tasteful-
way, I do think that's how it will inevitably end up getting resolved when it does happen. You know, I also think it's kind of ridiculous unless it really is just like a single machine built next to a nuclear power plant like you described. I just don't see any way something that powerful could be regulated, assuming that it's more than just one central point that can be disconnected. You know, as soon as it's online, it's just going to spread and be everywhere and uncontrollable. You know.
Yeah, I guess as far as the ability to actually do something is concerned and like what countries could, I think like it's interesting, like when we to talk about like Chinese response to COVID, like I do think that they like they did have like a way stricter lockdown than we did, obviously, right? And like I guess I just kind of think about like, I mean, maybe it's a stereotype, but like imagine in your head a Chinese market, and I think you generally see something that is less regulated than a U.S. market. Do you agree with that? Like, at least that's how the vision in my head of a
You
Chinese
mean
market.
by market?
You mean like a financial market?
No, I mean like a street market. Like,
Oh, okay.
if you talk about a street market, I mean, we don't even have the concept of a street market usually.
Yeah, not
Like,
really.
It's like a farmer's market. You kind of have that. Yeah, farmer's market.
Yeah.
But like even a farmer's market, like the price is the price. You don't haggle. And certainly at most farmers markets, I think that they usually have like a committee that gets together and decides like who gets to be the stalls and all this stuff, like, you know, and how many stalls are there going to be? Where's parking going to be? All that stuff. Right. And I would generally not think about that kind of thing when I think about a market in China. And so the reason I bring this up is just because like, I think that if the people were truly against that decision of lockdown, it would have been the same deal as the market. Like they would just go outside anyways, right? That's the way I feel about it. Like I feel like the people, if they didn't agree with, if the majority of people don't agree with something, they generally take matters in their own hands. Even in this country to some degree, like obviously the Congress and the president are really unpopular, but like if they made an order saying that like we all had to stand on our head once a day, nobody would comply, right? So I mean, like I think the lockdown is kind of a similar thing, right? That like if truly like, you know, 90%, 80% of people didn't agree with that idea, they would just go outside anyways and do their normal thing.
Well, they had police show up in people's houses at gunpoint and put them in their house. Like,
Yeah, sure.
But I want to direct from this like open market concept to economic markets.
Sure.
Okay, so China controls their companies.
Right.
This is widespread knowledge. The CCP is in control of their companies. So they have the ability to say, okay, well, what are you doing, company? And company says, okay, we're working on AI. This is the level that we're currently at. And then the government can go, then whoever's in charge can go, that's way too fucking fast. Slow it the fuck down, right? Like, we need to understand where we're at before we go to the next level so we can more accurately predict where we're going. Like, that's how I'm thinking of it.
Sure.
I
definitely agree. There's no body like that in the U.S. that would actually act. I mean, theoretically, we have a body like that, but it certainly has made the decision to basically surrender to Silicon Valley, do whatever they want.
So that's my thought. But my second tangent is, so let's say that it would be possible to assign somebody. So let's take COVID as another example. Okay, so COVID came up, the government assigned Fauci. Let's remove the right, wrong, everything that happened equation. There was one person that was literally in charge of what the company or what the country's response was to that, including rules on companies of what they could and couldn't do during that time. Okay. Let's say we put somebody in charge like that for this problem, right? One, I'm interested into who you would pick. But secondly, I want you to think about what would happen if it was Musk.
See, that would be my huge fear, is that if we were to like elect someone, that the populace would select someone like Musk, to do the job. But
First, can I speak a second on Fauci being dictator?
Yeah.
I just to back to my previous point about China's handling of COVID, like, imagine if Biden had been president during the beginning of COVID and had literally like basically said, we'll do whatever you want, Fauci. And like Fauci has said, full lockdown, same level as China. Imagine how the US people would react to that. So I'm just saying, like, I think the situation goes very deep to the core of the society and not just the government that's in power. All right, now back to Musk being elected dictator, because I think with that.
Well, the first question is who would you pick?
Right.
Who would I pick? Yeah, I need to think about that. Probably, like,
you have to be a technology leader who knows what the fuck's going on.
I disagree. I think it would probably have to be like an ethicist, or somebody, or maybe a philosopher, something along those lines.
Point.
I don't know who I would pick right now. I think at one point in time I would have picked like Carl Sagan or somebody along those lines, who has like that big spotlight view of things that are going on. Or
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Right. Oh God, no, not Neil deGrasse Tyson. Yeah, and not Dollar Store Thor either, whatever his name is. I can't remember his name. But yeah, I don't know, somebody along those lines. I'm sure there is like a great science communicator out there that I just don't know, who is like Carl Sagan level of like understanding of the world. But I would not put a tech leader into that position. No.
So okay, non-tech leader. Okay. But not necessarily who would you pick, but let's go down these tangents of who would be the most terrible picks. Okay. So Jordan Peterson. You said philosophers, right? Like, so Jordan Peterson.
Technically a philosopher, that is true.
Technically, I can't argue with it. I mean, honestly,
this card. Technically a philosopher.
Like, honestly, I disagree with a lot of things that Jordan Peterson says, but I also agree with a lot of things that Jordan Peterson says. And I think overall, Jordan Peterson wants to see like the survival of the human race. So in that sense, like, if it had to be Jordan Peterson, I would just request there was like a, I don't know, women's right advocate who worked alongside him, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, something along those lines, somebody else. But yeah, I mean, I think that if I got to jokingly name someone as this person, I would go like Mike Tyson or something like that.
That's an interesting pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess as both a joke answer and a serious answer, I'm going to posit Taylor Swift. And part of my reasoning is just because, like, going back to the idea of it being a deep problem with society, Taylor Swift, I think, can actually call a large number of people to action in a way that maybe some of these other people would not be able to do. Because a dictator can't just like make commands and expect everybody to follow them 100%. I mean, obviously they have the military on their side, but they have to keep the military on their side by giving reasonable orders and also doing things that people generally like. And I mean, if the military are going home to their families and seeing their families happy and, in good health and all that stuff because of the policies that are being passed, then that's a good way to garner support. But also a good way to like initially get that ball rolling is to just be extremely, I guess, famous and attractive. I don't know. Taylor Swift's attractive. We'll say that. Hot take.
Swift's hot.
The hot take, huh?
I also think she's a wizard, but that's a whole other topic.
If she's a wizard, why is she just become a fucking dictator already?
I don't think that's what she wants.
Damn.
I don't think that's why she's here.
So I would pose two separate people that I think could actually do a fantastic job. I'm going to say one specifically before the other one because the other one's going to garner probably a lot of affirmatives from us.
Okay.
If I had to guess. So, but the first one's Dave Smith.
Who's that?
Dave Smith is a very, very, very popular libertarian who's also a comedian who spends a lot of time talking about what's going on in the world, but always has a opinion of we need to cut this shit out and everybody needs to get along. Okay. I think that would be a very good pick. Now, secondly, the one that I think that everybody's going to like is Duncan Trussell. I think we should put Duncan Trussell in charge of AI because he has the forethought to say, okay, I think I know where AI is going, but also this whole he has a deeply spiritual connection to people.
Sure.
And so if he can put those two things together and say, okay, I don't understand the nuances of technology, but I don't understand where I don't want to go because we need to make sure that people are protected, right? So I think that would be a really good one. I'm interested to hear your opinions on that.
I think if I'm going to pick anybody to take this job, I really want them to have good Buddhist principles.
Sure.
I just think that's a good start,
Unless it's a joke, he's converted full on to Christianity.
No, that's why I am pro Duncan Trussell running artificial intelligence. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm okay with that. Every time I listen to him talk about artificial intelligence, I agree with what he's saying. He'll make a bombastic claim and then clarify that it was bombastic, but explain why he I don't know, you understand why he made the joke. You're like, oh, I can see where that's going. Yeah, we probably should pay attention to that,
Well, I'm going to throw out Marianne Williamson in a similar vein. I've always been a huge fan of hers, and she's Duncan Trussell-esque. She is a boomer, though, so maybe that would actually help her electability chances in this environment.
Yeah, I'd probably get her elected. Yeah.
Let's talk about the big one. Rogan.
In charge of what's he gonna do? Ask the artificial intelligence really stupid questions and hope that it leads the conversation.
First off, yes, that's gonna be the first thing that happens. But he's also publicly said over and over and over and over again that he's super concerned.
Okay.
About what?
So is my dad, but I'm not gonna elect him to be in charge of artificial intelligence.
Jeff's father, in charge of AI. I think.
I mean, he'd probably do a better job than the Senate and House are doing right now.
I mean, he'd do a better job than Joe Rogan, I'm sure.
Humanity is doomed if the AI has never done cocaine.
Yeah, and that's not to shit on Joe Rogan. It's just Joe Rogan just doesn't have a spot in that conversation, I don't think.
All right, Pat Williams.
Pat Williams?
I'm pro.
Yeah, I'm for that.
No, you don't even need to qualify that one.
I don't know AI up in here, bitch.
I think that we should take some large language models, train them specifically on historical, philosophers and, ethicists. Is that the right word? Ethicist?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then just put those AI in charge of controlling the AI. You
I feel
know,
like that's
maybe
what
it's just
Jordan Peterson is, though. He's just a robot that spats out older people's theories on shit.
He's a large language model that's only been fed Carl Jung.
I like it a lot. So bringing it back. So let's bring it back to the original pointed question,
Sure.
which is, well, what kind of change do we really think that we make a kind of change like that in the country? Is it possible to make a change like that in the country? Jeff says no.
Yeah, I say no. I think that it's just going to have to blow up in one way or the other. I just don't see us making gradual changes towards something like that.
Well, if you think about the structural changes element, like going back to the, COVID Chinese thing and like, whether society accepts certain things, right? I think that our society has basically chosen to accept the current state of affairs, no matter how bad it gets, to a point. I mean, there's got to be some point where it cannot be accepted anymore. But I mean, it's just not like it is nearly impossible to predict where that is. But it does seem like we're on a track of things getting gradually worse until whatever,
Right.
something
Until
breaks completely.
something breaks, yeah.
Yeah, and which is something that I'd like to have an entire episode talked about, which is the entire clause of the Constitution that says that we're able to replace the government if we don't think the government is faithful anymore.
Sure.
It's written in the Constitution, but do we actually even have the power to do that anymore is the big question. I think at one point in time, the people had the actual power in order to do it. I think at this point, the only way that's done is if every state winds up like Texas, right? And they're all like, okay, I don't fucking like this anymore. I'm done with it. We've got to do something about it. Like, I think that's the level it has to come to, but there's way too many fucking people now. Like, there's so many more people in this country than there was then by 100 million factor, right? Like,
Sure.
There's just so many more people. And but that's something that I think could be a good topic for a conversation for next season.
Well, let me let Thomas Jefferson take it away here. He's one of the people who actually put that in the Constitution. And he says, the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. It's natural manure.
Yeah.
So that's something Jefferson said. So, I mean, when he wrote that, or I mean, maybe he didn't write that exact line, but when those types of people agreed on that statement, I believe that's what they were thinking. I mean, I do think that the people do, in some sense, literally have the ability to replace their government. But, like, will it be legal under the current system? Probably not. I mean, it would, in theory, right, though, a number of people getting together could cite that measure in the Constitution and say, like, well, we must let these changes through. Like, this overrules everything else, because in some ways, if enough people were on that side and did, agree to use that amendment at the same, or then not amendment, but that, like, idea at the same time, it would be effectively legal, right?
Well, I mean, doesn't that depend on who's in the Supreme Court at the time?
Yeah, sure, of course. But I mean, like, if you had enough people, the Supreme Court can't say no. I do think maybe we could spend some time talking about here at the end, like, let's just do the thought experiment. Like, say our current government became sort of weak to the point where people kind of saw the cracks starting to form. And they decided, like, okay, before everything totally breaks down, let's get in there and let's really, like, absolutely fix this thing from the ground up. But we're not in a situation where, like, let's say the government has literally fallen, right? Like, people just aren't coming into work anymore. Like, we're not talking about a situation where, like, Congress has stopped showing up, We're just talking about a system where a situation where people can see the cracks forming and kind of decide like where to direct their energy to kind of try to change the thing. Like, what do you imagine that would look like? I have some thoughts if you want me to go.
Let's hear yours. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so go ahead. No, I was going to say, one potential way is actually the Supreme Court, and this goes all the way back to what Jeff was saying at the beginning. Like when people were talking about Bernie Sanders running for president, I think that was sort of one of those cracks, and that was sort of an attempt at getting in there. And I think that the Supreme Court could theoretically be, through the president, taken over in that way. And because people talked a lot about when Bernie was like potentially going to be president, like what would he do about the Supreme Court problem? And one of the solutions is that he would pack the court. And I'm guessing you guys might be familiar with that.
Yeah.
Basically, the concept is there's no actual law that says that there can't be more than 9 Supreme Court justices.
Right,
so he could just be like appoint, right? And therefore have enough that he's now overruled the existing one. And if that happened enough times, it would be exactly like Jeff said, and every single American would be a Supreme Court justice technically, and we'd have to invent an app to let us vote. So, I mean, theoretically, that is a way that, like, if a president with strong popular backing got in there and was able to strong-arm Congress, that the system could actually be structurally reformed by its own rules, just appoint everybody.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one way to do it. And I think the cracks are showing. I think they're there because everybody talks about them now.
Right.
Like, it's not even a question that Congress is corrupt and they're doing everything that they possibly can just to make money off of the stock market, regardless of what the people that they're supposed to represent want. The president, like I said before, just gets in and executive signatures away whatever the fuck they want to. And so, like, it's corrupt. It's really corrupt, and we talk about it openly.
Sure.
And so, man, more and more people are doing that. Almost everybody's doing that at this.
Right.
The only solution, if we want to go down that road, it's like you said, like, we would have to have a president that could come in and make a change in a way that, and this is where we're kind of leading, like, because those justices right now have to be ratified by Congress.
Sure.
To get in. They're selected by the president, but they have to be ratified in through Congress. Right? You would have to have somebody to strong arm that position.
Sure.
And the only way to do that is if you're a dictator.
So, I mean, FDR technically did. He did tell Congress that I think actually what he did was he had a strong congressional majority, and he told the Supreme Court justices that if they didn't vote the way he wanted somewhat, he was going to go ahead and elect a 10th one, and so on. And so I do think that you can do it within the system theoretically. And I think you can even overpower Congress within the system kind of the same way, because I think if you get elected a president with a very popular will behind you, like, effectively at the same time, a number of Congress people are going to be elected who also agree with you, right? Because just due to law of large numbers, right? All those people turning out of the ballot, the people are going to, like, the Congress people that get elected are going to trend towards the ones that agree with that president.
Yeah, for sure. But the only other option, other than that, is kind of what they talked about. It's blood, right?
Sure.
Like, and so I think we're still too comfortable. Like, I think that eventually, if we keep going down this path, there is going to be a point. To Rabb's thoughts, that we will get to a point where America's not as comfortable as it once was, and that's no longer going to be acceptable. When we have more people that are out of jobs and we have more people who are struggling and the government cannot provide, which is what will happen if another Great Depression happens. This government will not be able to afford to take care of everybody who's out of a job. Like our interest rates are already fucking skyrocketed, our inflation skyrocketed, everything else. Like the government will not be able to do that without busting our dollar. And if they bust our dollar, all of our power in the world's gone. So the question is, what's the point in which most people are so destitute and uncomfortable and don't have the creature comforts that describe current America, right? When people can't go get their iPhone anymore, when people can't afford what they want, but they also can't afford rent, which is happening. They also can't afford groceries, which is happening. That, like, we're getting to that point. The question is, do we have in the current generations that are actually active? So not the boomers, maybe not even Gen X, because a lot of them are over 60, right? Like over 55, 60 years old. So does the millennial and younger generations have it in them to pick up guns and march on the Capitol? Right?
See, that's where my mind was going when you asked the question, what happens when there starts to be little cracks, what actions will be taken? My mind went straight to, well, I feel like the Jan 6 people felt like they saw a crack.
Yeah.
And I feel like but I do feel like that's what it'll be when that crack finally really, really is glaringly obvious.
Sure.
Is that something like that's going to happen again?
Yeah. Like that's more likely to happen at this point than not.
Yeah.
Like, it's more likely. I would say I would bet on that in Vegas, that's probably more likely to happen than not happen within the next decade.
Well, that kind of event and a very popular president being in power, like, those aren't mutually exclusive either. I mean, Trump was definitely very popular from the perspective of the people who did the January 6th march. It's just that, like, that's not the majority of the country, which is weird. Like, I think that if people were marching on the Capitol, like, theoretically, I mean, I think that happened during FDR too. This is just convincing me more that we need to do an FDR episode.
Yeah. So I think the only way it happens right now, like right this very second, it could happen right this very second. And I think the only way that happens this right second is if the CIA tries to kill RFK Jr. If the CIA tries to kill RFK Jr. right now, it goes and shows the bust again, right? Like,
I think if the CIA killed RFK Jr. right now, the world would just be like, yeah, that makes sense.
I think so.
That'd be a revolution. I think people would go, that's another Kennedy.
The CIA has the opportunity to do the funniest thing.
I'm not saying it's successful. I'm saying it's an attempted, right?
If they attempted and failed?
And failed.
Okay.
Yeah,
sure.
okay, that'd probably be bad. Yeah, because that would get some populace behind them, I'm sure.
Right.
But we're not suggesting that, CIA,
No,
all right?
Please don't do that, CIA.
The Panda Pod Thoughts Expanded does not support any assassination attempts, okay?
Holster that heart attack gun, please.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't need all this. And don't shoot whatever sonic guns you have that scrambles people's brain and makes them throw up from a distance. Don't be using that shit either.
Yeah, don't even Havana syndrome anybody. It's not nice.
Yeah.
Don't have Havana syndrome, people.
Do acid water supplies again, though. That was funny.
CIA wish list.
Yeah. We should do a best of episode. CIA best of.
We'll place all the fluorine in water with MDMA. Well, I said it was going to be wild.
Yeah, that sure was a wild tangent.
That was a fun one.
Yeah, let us down the wild.
That was a good episode for our second to last one here.
Agreed.
And I think this seems like a great place to wrap it up. And let's commit to, Jeff, you better leave that in when you edit the episode. We got to commit to watching Mrs. Davis before the next one.
Yeah, we better. I already have. Me and Elliot just watched it this past week because she hadn't seen it, and she loved it. So I'm fresh. I'm ready to talk.
Yeah. All right. Well, if I'm going to do that, I have to watch the first episode tonight, I think. So
do it.
I feel like we should go ahead and wrap it up here and get on that.
Yeah, I don't have any anime at the moment.
Mrs. Davis is an anime.
Yeah. Just say
If it was, I'd be all over it. I don't know why they just don't only make anime anymore. Like, it's... But young people only watch anime.
We're probably like 3 months away from an AI filter that can turn any show into anime.
True.
Well, based on the AI stuff that we have right now, we're only a couple months away from being able to do a whole podcast without actually being here. Not saying that that's what we're going to do. But
not saying that's not what this episode was. We fed it the last two. It's just going to be this forever, guys.
Yeah.
The AI that's going to overthrow the government is going to be the result of us doing this conversation over and over again. And eventually the AI is going to become more and more like, like ready to take up arms. And so
it's the Riverside.fm AI that eventually goes rogue. But it's from listening to us give it ideas.
Yeah. I already had it use our voices, a conglomeration of our voices, reading a joke in the style of Dan Soder. So if you know who that is, maybe we'll post that up on our Patreon that we're going to have next season, guys.
There you go.
Why does the AI keep storming the Capitol talking about some guy named Mark?
Karl Mark. Karl Mark sounds like somebody who sold monsters in the locker room in high school.
Karl Mark is definitely from whatever part of Appalachia that what's his name's from. Oh man, what's his name? What am I thinking about right now? I have a really big problem with people's names, guys. Theo Vaughn. That's where
Karl Marx believes in enabling the people, but enabling them to do a lot of meth.
Yeah, Karl Marx got too high on gas station boner pills and punched a hole in his wall.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the perfect place to leave it.
Boner pills, yep. That's a good plot. Good spot.
All right, well, we'll see you all next week for the Mrs. Davis cast.
Excellent.
Yep.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, buddy.